Derek, do you mind going over kind of what you like, how good or your luck has been the last couple of seasons with you placing your futures and the futures you placed at the beginning of the year? How many of them, the last, I'd say, what, 2 to 3 seasons, are in the running there at the end of the season?
Um, over the past 2 seasons, I've been able to put 7 of 8 futures plays into the postseason, and really with this market, that's what you're looking to do. If you make multiple plays, you're basically trying to get multiple teams into the playoffs because at that point, you start narrowing down basically the potential of losing because at a certain point, the odds you're getting on the team you took back in preseason or early May, maybe even in March, you're getting such a high number as far as plus odds that if that team gets to the playoffs, you could potentially bet the other side in every game they play and still make a profit. So, it opens up a variety of ways to take advantage of a number like this. But I think to a certain aspect, there is a little bit of strategy involved when it comes to making multiple futures plays. Um, I prefer to try and find teams on in both pennants or in both leagues, with the AL and NL, because as I said, you get multiple teams into the playoffs. It's reducing those odds of losing and raising your odds of winning. And that's what you're looking to do.
Exactly. Like that's what we want people like that. I mean, if you're placing futures, that's what you're hoping to do. If you're doing multiple, that at least you can make a profit. If you make a profit in sports betting, I say that's a win. I don't, for me personally, as long as you make a profit, it doesn't have to be a massive profit. Like I know a lot of people like say, "Oh, I put in 100. I'm hoping to make 1,000." No, for me, if I make any sort of profit, I say that's a win.
Exactly. If this was some sort of financial investment, they tell you, expect 3% return on investment. On $100, that's $3. Not a lot of money, but it's still a profit. So, yes, as you're saying, it's very important if you're making a profit coming out on the profitable side, but it also helps when you're making smart, educated. Um, there is luck involved. No one will ever say that luck is not involved. But when you can potentially reduce the need for luck, you know, have a little bit of strategy. Um, I don't think out of, well, out of all my futures plays for this coming season, only 2 teams are in the same division. So I don't have to worry about teams clashing heads throughout the season that much as far as one team knocking out another, making it to the playoffs. Um, that opens up the possibility for getting multiple teams into the playoffs. Now, this wasn't something that was a deciding factor, but it was notable after I started looking into the teams and deciding if I liked them or not.
To be honest, I was very surprised you included the White Sox because me personally, I'm not high on them this year. Now they did get a new manager, which makes me feel better because Tony La Russa was awful. But I think that might be one to keep an eye on. I personally don't think much is gonna come of it, but that's the nice thing about placing futures, and it's nice to have ones that not everyone picks because it's nice to pick that one outlier, that one with those higher odds, because you never know. And with your history the past couple seasons, we may want to actually maybe want to consider it.
Well, and something that I was looking at, and it's something I lean on heavily when it comes to something like World Series futures or even the pennant markets. Pitching. and especially starting pitching. And the Chicago White Sox might have one of the best starting 1 through 5 rotations in the MLB right now. And if this team makes it to the playoffs, something like a lethal starting pitching rotation, that can go very far. You get 2 or 3 pitchers get hot in the postseason, the way things are set up, you could easily find yourself in the World Series.
Yeah. If you have, I say, if you have two solid starting pitchers in a 5 game series or even in a 7 game series, you could see both those guys twice. So there's your 4 wins right there. And then if you have a solid third like Chicago does, with so their top three most likely will be Lucas Giolito, Lance Lynn, and Dylan Cease. If everything goes right for them, I could see 2 15 game winners there and someone between 10 and 15.
Yes,
Like I
easily.
I think Lance Lynn is someone that like like his weight has been, his pitching goes up and down too. Like it balloons like crazy. So um yeah. So according to some offsite books, White Sox are at plus 3,300. Now these are World Series odds, correct? These are not
Yes.
uh American League. So DraftKings has them at plus 4,000. FanDuel has the White Sox at plus 3,500. So if you want to
See?
make more money and you want better odds, definitely DraftKings is the way to go. Now, most of these numbers will probably stay the same. I personally think the first month, unless you see a drastic injury or a major move, I expect a lot of these lines to stay the same. Because with baseball, this season is so long. It's a
Exactly.
very, very long season. So the odds are definitely not going to change too drastically unless something changes, like a major injury, a major transaction. That, for me, with baseball, is what causes the shifts in those lines. So now let's go ahead and move on to your, I guess, next highest odd, which is the Seattle Mariners. Offsite book has them at plus 2,000. DraftKings has them at plus 1,900, and FanDuel has Seattle at plus 2,000. So, like we said with Chicago, it's pretty much around the same number. So, to be honest, it doesn't necessarily matter which book you place it on. It's just more of a comfort thing. Like, I know a lot of people just they prefer to use DraftKings or they prefer to use offsite books or they just have their preference. Each person has their preference. But Seattle there. I definitely know you are not alone in that. There's a lot of people based on what they did last year that are really high on Seattle. Um, I mean, it helps when you have a generational talent there in Julio Rodriguez. That definitely helps. Um, but just kind of go more into why exactly Seattle is one of your futures there.
As you said, they have one of the hottest young players in the league, but also slowly I don't want to say amassed a talent pool, but they've slowly been building up that organization. It is not the same Mariners team that we have seen over the past few decades. Yes, they broke that curse of, that playoff drought, but at the same time, they're coming into a season where they can play free. There's no pressure on them to make the playoffs or make a second run. They have a fan base behind them that is strong and passionate. They have a city that is, I think, falling in love with the team again. And you have a lot going on that, you got a young club. And also, I wouldn't be surprised. if this was a team that was active come the trade deadline because of things like having attractive young players that they could potentially leverage for whether it be more vets or maybe a specific position need or a bat. Um, so yeah, I think this team is definitely one that can be dangerous if they get to the playoffs again. And I also wouldn't be surprised if throughout the season, you know, I don't think it'll be difficult in that division out in the West, but I also do believe that they won't have the pressure of trying to battle it out with a team like Houston to win the division. But at the same time, we saw last year that in this new format that the MLB has for the playoffs, the Mariners can be a very strong team for one of those three wild card positions. And as I said, you get a team like this into the playoffs, it changes the scenario. You know, 162 game season is a marathon. It's that simple. You don't need a team like this to go out and dominate for 140 games, 120 games. They don't have to go out and win 100 games. But if they make it to the playoffs, you having a number like plus 22, that's, that's pretty nice to
Yeah,
have.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I'm really high on Seattle, so I'm definitely interested to see what they do here. I would love to see someone take down Houston. Houston has ruled that division for a very long time. Um, there's so it's going to be interesting to see if anyone can do it, or is Houston just going to show that, like the Dodgers have for the last decade in the NL West, it's their division, and good luck trying to win.
Well, now I will say I would not be shocked to see Houston win the division. I just I think they haven't been able to replace the talent that they've lost over the past few years, and I think that's going to catch up with them some. I think they're a lot more vulnerable to injury than some of the other division leaders that we may look at in a World Series market. And I think this is the year that you finally see them come down a little bit because it's hard to maintain the pace that they've been going at, and
Yeah.
you start to lose a little bit of starting pitching, you start to lose some of your key positional players. They've done a good job over the past few years of replacing and reworking and retooling. I just this season I think it catches up to them, and and this is coming from somebody that had them last year. So
Haven't you had them the last 2 years, Houston?
yes, yes, because they made it to both. Because
They did.
in 2021 I had the Braves and Houston, so it was a nice little start to this run. Yes, I'm looking for a dynasty. I want three in a
You,
row. I
you
want
want?
three in a row.
Yes, three in a row would be nice. Moving on to our next one here, you got the NL defending champion Philadelphia Phillies here. Off books had it at plus 1600. DraftKings here has it. Hold up. At Phillies is at plus 1800, and FanDuel has it at plus 1500. So,
Hmm.
like the other ones, they're all pretty much around the same.
Well, and I will say, because I made these plays few weeks back, um, there was some slight movement in the Philly price to plus 18, but that's not really much. Like I wouldn't worry about that. But as you were saying, a slight variance in some books, and even where in my case I saw the number move against me a little bit, there's another book out there with a even lower number. So clearly, the books don't know everything. And
They know more than the average person, though.
yes, 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 I will say that, but not always. somebody, a person that I follow that is very experienced in sports books and how they operate, something he will say often, nobody knows shit. And sometimes that's the case. I mean, it's that simple. And so, yes, somebody's going to know something more than the other person in just about every case. But you don't know the outcome till it's over. And so, you know, some
Yeah. I'm very shocked how the odds here for the Phillies because Bryce Harper earliest he comes back. And this is being conservative, June 1st. I personally think it's after the All-Star break.
how long's the season?
162.
Okay.
It's
All they
actually
have,
funny. So I was looking at this a couple weeks. He has the same, or he did have the same MVP odds as Jazz Chisholm. And
well,
Jazz is going to play the whole season.
yeah, but
He's going to
again,
play
like you
out.
said, that's a very different market. But again, do you think Philly makes it to the playoffs?
I don't know based on the division that they're in.
Ag-
I
That's just it.
think I
That's
think they do because the Central is weak, so they're only going to have their one team probably. And I think the West. I mean, the West. I don't know. I think the Giants and the Diamondbacks. There's a lot of unknown there. Me personally, I would love to see the Diamondbacks, but I got to be a non-homer. I think they're going to threaten. I don't know if they'll get in. So I think Phillies probably will because I think they'll be three from the East again.
see. So if this team gets to the playoffs again, it's a whole nother ball game, and you gonna give me plus 1,600 on basically, for the most part, the same team from last year. And even though with the recent injury to Rice Hoskins,
Which is such a terrible injury, by the way.
yes, yes, all the complaining people wanted to say about why are these players in the WBC? This happened in a spring training game, so hush up, just be
That's
quiet.
what I said. I'm like, I don't see anyone losing their ears like they did with Diaz when Hoskins got hurt.
Yes,
It's how injuries in sports work. Sometimes it happens during the game. Like we've heard these stories where guys are around their house, opening a box with box cutters and cuts their hand. Like
playing a video game and punched their
it's in the
controller.
yes, it's definitely like injuries are just unique. You have unique injuries like what happened with Diaz, which was so sad. Reese Hoskins. For me, the Phillies, if they can hover around 500 or stay within that wild card spot until they get Bryce Harper back, their odds I think are good because a lot of it's going to be put on the shoulders of Trey Turner and Kyle Schwarber, in my opinion. Like they're going to have to step up. And if Trey can do what he did in the World Baseball Classic, watch out, y'all.
Yeah. So definitely with the Phillies, like I said, they're a team. I won't even be watching until after the All Star break. I mean, like you said, it's a marathon.
It is.
I'm making these plays now, knowing that it's months out. I'm not sweating the first 2-3 months of the season. This is a long game.
I'm very curious. Like I'll probably look at these lines again during the All-Star break and see how much they've changed because I don't think they're going to change too much before then.
Yeah, and I mean honestly, that short of a big time injury to someone, um, I mean for the most part, I wouldn't see much change. I mean, just from the teams that we've mentioned, you might see some slight movement on a team like Chicago, Um, if they say they come out the gates hot, they're leading the division the first month or two, you might see that number come down some, but you're not going to see it below plus 2,000, plus
Yeah.
2,500. Um, because to a certain aspect, it's about where's the money coming in. Some of these teams' odds, I'm not big on Houston. They're going to be a favorite or, top in that discussion throughout the majority of the year. I'm not sitting here telling you that I think they're going to be a bad team, but when it comes down to it, I don't think they're going to win the World Series.
According to DraftKings and FanDuel, they're the best at plus 600.
See?
So, yeah, I think futures for any sport is always interesting to look at, like opening day, All Star break, or middle of the year, and then like the last couple weeks of the season, and just see how drastically these lines move. Because I personally think that's when the lines move the most. Is
Yes. And also things like um, any sort of early injuries in the season or, something that wasn't season ending or devastating, but, you're going to miss a month. So we held you out a month and a half. So you came back fully healthy. Um, things like that, they sort of tend to line up around the All Star break, bringing people back. Also, you're starting to figure out who in your farm system you might want to bring up and start utilizing. Um, Another team that we're going to get into, I think that's something we could see with them later in the season because at one position where coming into the season they had a need. Apparently, they got three different guys that can play the position, and two are currently sitting in the minor leagues. So that can definitely raise some interesting discussions as we get into the season and see how things develop.
your next play is one I will be jumping on before opening day. That is the Toronto Blue Jays at plus 1400. DraftKings has them at plus 1300, and FanDuel has them at plus 1200. So, again, right around the same. I'm very high on them. I think they are the best team in the AL East, personally. That like the I think they're gonna score a lot of runs. Like that
Yes,
offense is gonna
yes.
put up some
That
runs.
Yes, the offense in Toronto is dangerous. Like
Like
I
it
know
is
the
amazing.
Yankees get all the headlines, and Judge did what he did and got all the attention for doing it, but the offense that the Toronto Blue Jays have been building for the past 2-3 seasons, that thing's scary.
Really, they're gonna put like they have a top five catcher. Like they have a lot of guys that are in the top, I'd say 10 at their position. Um, and like so their pitching isn't awful. Like, and it doesn't need to be top tier. With that offense, it just needs to be average.
Yeah, and like you said earlier, if you have one or two studs in your starting rotation, you get into a 7 game series, that's 3-4 wins because you might play those guys twice.
Yeah. Like that's why if you have two top of the like we didn't really get into it, but Phillies, that's what we saw last year with
Yeah.
Wheeler and in Nola. That's why they
Mhm.
went so far. Is those guys could in a series really win at least two, as many as four in a series, and that's it right there. Like that's all you need. So Toronto, yeah, I'm very high on. That will probably be my my non-homer pick because I already did my my homer future. I knew Derek was gonna be like, "Come on, man." I had to I had like $100 to make plays on, so I did literally all future Diamondback ones. I'm like, I don't expect these to hit, but if they do, I'll be pleased. I'll be pleased.
Man,
So
for the record, last year when you played Baltimore and Seattle to win the World Series, I told you then it might have been a good idea to play them to make the playoffs,
but not yeah.
not the World Series.
Yeah, I mean those ones this year are making the playoffs. I'll probably like I might do for both of those for playoffs.
I think with Baltimore, it'd definitely be something to hold off till in season. It's hard. I want to be high on Baltimore after what we saw last season. If they, for years and years, Baltimore would bring in talent and then send it elsewhere. They'd ship it away
Yeah,
every year. Baltimore's problem has never been developing talent or finding talent. They just send it away before it ever plays for them.
because they
And
weren't in the running, and these teams that needed a bat or an arm for a postseason run. It's like, oh, Baltimore, you're out of it. Let's go ahead and go after you, one of your guys.
yeah, and even this past season, they traded Trey Mancini. It seemed to work out for both sides pretty well. And even after the trade, you had the sense that this was a different Baltimore team. This wasn't a strip it down to the bones. This was, this move benefited us. And, you know, the season might have not ended the way they wanted it, but I think if you were a Baltimore Orioles fan, last season was a major success. So to make the playoffs, I think it'll be an interesting market to watch because I think definitely early in the season you're probably going to see a plus number for the yes. Um,
Plus
you know,
370, by the way.
say I was expecting somewhere more, maybe around the plus 250 range, but because me personally, I'm not big on the Yankees this year. I I think injury
Sorry,
is going to
Ferris.
strike them down.
Sorry, Ferris. My man. Yeah, neither I'm not either. It's because what happened to their starting pitching here to start the season.
Yeah, that and I don't think enough of their players will stay healthy. Combined with outside of offensively, their top 2 3 guys, there's not much there to work with. I mean, it's that simple. For years now, this team has survived off of hitting the long ball. That's great. You'll win games in the regular season. Do it in the playoffs. I mean, we saw in the World Series, Philly was dropping bombs. That other
Yeah.
side said, okay, we got something for that.
Yeah, it's called pitching. Yeah. So, all right. Moving on to what most likely I think a lot of people will be on because what they like they've just locked up everyone. Braves offsite books plus 900. DraftKings has it at plus 750, which is the second highest odds, and FanDuel has it at plus 750 as well, second highest odds. Um, I mean, what they did last season to catch the Mets, and it wasn't that the Mets lost it.
Hold
They
up. But you have to recognize it's the Mets. The Mets will Met. The
But the thing
Mets
is, the
will
Mets
Met.
didn't Mets in the regular season.
It
Atlanta just went insane. Like it's not like the
but that's
Mets
just
had a
it.
massive losing streak.
It doesn't
Atlanta
matter.
just went crazy.
It doesn't matter. That's how you met. Like,
They
if
met against the Padres for sure. They
see,
didn't met against Atlanta,
but it doesn't
in my
matter
opinion.
because they had a chance to lock it up, end it all, and they couldn't do it. Like, it's just that simple. I'm sorry. If you're putting money on the Mets, good luck.
Yeah. Mets.
Good luck.
Yeah. Uh, I don't not like the Mets, but they always give Met fans and us baseball fans a reason why we shouldn't trust the Mets. But I was surprised that what they did last year, because I thought they would met in like August, like they always do, like July and August. They didn't. They
Yeah,
did it
they just
in
made it
September.
worse for their fans. Like
They did. They gave them hope, and you're like, oh, I'm sorry.
for what 25 years, Mets fans have been like, "Yeah, it's gonna happen. It's gonna happen. It's not happening. It's not happening." It happened.
So yeah. The only question mark for me on the Braves is shortstop. What are they doing at shortstop?
And that's what I was referencing earlier. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if service time came into this a little bit.
Yeah.
Some of the politicking of baseball that we see with position players. Because if I'm not mistaken, they got Grissom under contract uh, for a couple
Yeah.
of years. Um,
I believe he signed an extension. I think it was last year.
yeah, I thought I heard something about, but so this could be some of that, but also maybe saving some depth for into the season, having some guys that can come in for the most part fully healthy, ready to go. Not to say they won't be challenged at the AAA level, but you know, it's more just keeping them in the wings, bring them up. You got a few young, healthy bodies. They can move people around. Um, but I do think it will be interesting as we get into the season, reach that halfway point, all star break, and start to see some of the things that go down. Because I'm telling you now, if the Braves make the playoffs, Grissom will be on their playoff roster.
I think Grissom's probably there June 1st. Personally, I think yeah, the whole service time manipulation thing by Major League Baseball is just another reason why people that the sport is dying with the average fan. They're like, it's it's their best player. Why is he not on that opening day roster? It is, yeah, it's definitely one of the things that I'm not a fan of, but there's nothing we can do about it. These team, it's their choices to do it. So, but I would still, if you have some money and you want one that the risk isn't as high, Atlanta would definitely not be a bad one to place on. It's actually kind of funny. Here on Bases Loaded, we have fans of three different teams. The only team that Derek is placing a futures on is our boy Chris Garcia. San Diego Padres offsite books have him at plus 800, DraftKings plus 950, and FanDuel has it at plus 1,000. Um, the, I think a lot of people are going to have super high expectations for this Padres team. Like they're starting to run the team like the Dodgers have the last decade. Like they build up their farm system, they get these prospects, and then if they need to make a move or money is no object. Money is not a reason a move will not be made. Like they signed Xander Bogarts here this past offseason. Manny Machado opted out for about 10 days and then he re-signs a massive extension.
He,
So
he didn't even opt out. He just said, "I will when we get there." It was like, "Nah, nah, nah. We're not going through this. Come here. We're gonna sit down and
because
hammer
he's been
this out."
seeing all these guys, he's like seeing all these guys get these massive extensions. He's like, I'm doing just as good. Why should I not? And he did. Like what he did last year, I think a lot of people did not talk about. He was consistently good the entire season when
Yes, he
everyone else on that team offensively was struggling. He
he
wasn't.
was the MVP of that team.
I thought he should have been MVP of the National League, personally. Like, I get why they gave it to Goldschmidt. But I'm like, when you have two finalists on the same team, I feel like that hurts. Like, how can he be most valuable if another guy on the same team is considered most valuable? But that's here. That it's over. Um, I don't I don't place futures on MVP because I think, like Derek said, there's so many unknown factors come into play for MVP. Because it's a single player instead of with a team. At least maybe one guy gets injured or is off. It doesn't help. It doesn't hurt your future bet on it as much. You do a future on a individual player award, and then he gets hurt or he goes cold, you're done.
Yeah,
Like
you lose that guy for 60 to 90 days. You can almost scratch him out of the season unless you're talking about literally a top handful of players across the league. And in that case, you're hoping that it was literally like only 60 or 90 days, you know, not a 2, 3 month injury where you'll still see him throughout the season, but, it may not affect his career. But for that, MVP bet, oh, that's trash. You can rip that up and chuck it.
you can chuck it out the door, y'all. Um, no, there's a lot of excellent, I think, future plays here to be made this season. If you feel like just going one with insanely high odds, maybe don't wager as much. Chicago White Sox there here in the preseason, and the nice thing with World Series futures, you can still place them throughout the season.
Yes.
Like I think that's one of the reasons it's one of my favorite ones is a lot of these ones once the season starts they kind of close them or like the odds just don't shift as much. But I think but I think I don't know if I sent you, but I'll have to send you all the Diamondback future ones that I did, and you're just gonna shake your head. You're like, come on, Buck, what are you doing here? So, um, but no, it was a great discussion here. Um, I personally, if we're looking just based on Derek's history, where I think it's like there's been a like few times where like he like four of them, and like it's the four finalists in the AL
Well,
NLCS.
I almost had last year locked up. Um, like I
I would
said,
love
some
to
luck is
see.
involved, but yes, I would love to get. See, I don't know if you noticed, but there's 3 teams on each side
Very
from
soon.
each league.
Mhm.
Now the odds vary some, but yeah, I do feel that the likely winner will come out of the NL. Big reason why, the Padres and um the Braves, 2 teams I targeted. You've seen the number come down a little bit on the Braves. So yeah, I definitely think that you know, the World Series winner, there's a strong chance they come out of the NL, but it helps having, if you're playing multiple teams, you know, as I said, the Toronto Blue Jays are a team that I think, especially if they make it into the playoffs, which there's a strong probability that they will, that could be a very dangerous team in the playoffs. And so having that plus 1400 now, I, I think it's a very nice position to have come halfway point of the season, um, where maybe a team like Houston or the Yankees, who maybe they don't face injury and just are slumping, and depending on what their odds are looking at, you decide you want to come in on that. There's still a chance that team wins. So it's all about leveraging your positions a little bit, but these are 6 teams that I fully feel could win the World Series. Yes, I do believe that Chicago is a long shot. I'm not going to tell you that they're not a long
I mean,
shot.
based with the with that odd number, of course they're a long shot.
Exactly. Like, but at the same time, I this team didn't change much from last year outside of the manager, And last year, we saw what this team could be without that manager. I'm highly interested to see what we can get out of this team in a full season. And, give me that rotation in the playoffs. Yes, I will gladly come back and double down on the White Sox in a series matchup, or, you know, maybe to win the AL pennant.
Yeah, there's definitely, based on the futures that we've talked here today, my personal matchup I'd love to see is Padres Blue Jays. And I think Derek would like that too, because he wins no matter what.
I mean,
Um,
I could repeat 2021. I
it's
ain't got
not
no issue
it's
with
not
that.
terrible.
Yeah,
We're like, oh well. So
I mean, I won't lie. Last year, I was trying not to, like, it was almost a possibility because I had the Padres last year. Um, Clearly, I had Houston. Um, oh, I can't remember off the top of my head, but Philly ended up winning, so that sort of disrupted that. But
yeah,
uh, you know, I was on the verge of locking it up
he
two
was.
years in a row. So if
He's
they
done
say
very well, people, the last 2 seasons here with his futures.
they
So
say three's a dynasty, so I want to find out. Like,
you're
you know,
definitely gonna want to make sure, if you want to make some money, I would definitely do, if you have the funds available, to do maybe a couple of these plays that we have discussed here today. Everyone, Derek, where can everyone find you and everything you do online?
um, you can always find me at um on Twitter at dweatherly90. I've currently been on a little bit of a hiatus, but probably gonna start getting back into things. I do a little bit of freelance. I've done things with the LBHT show in the past. Currently in the NFL seasons with my man Caleb on the LGR, the highlights. I do an NFL betting show, but you can find me at Backyard Action Media here on YouTube. I'm also going to get back in more with TikTok and possibly dropping more plays there. So there's multiple ways you can reach out at me.
Yep, and you will find all the links to those socials in the description box below. You'll find mine and the channel. I'll also include fellow co-hosts on the channel, Chris Garcia and H Town Blake. Um, get ready for a fun 2023 season there, everyone. We appreciate everyone for tuning in. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe so you don't miss any of our future content. We will see you all next time.